So, I guess we should start with 8th grade to give a little bit of context to the entire story. 8th grade, I think, was an interesting subsection of my middle school experience. I remember one of my best friends coming out as trans to me. We talked a lot over text and email. I think that that was my first, I guess, real exposure to the LGBT community, or a member of the LGBT community. Another interesting thing about this year is that I had a crush on another one of my best friends. Let's call her H. This time I thought she was male, because I don't think that she had even come out to herself as trans yet. But I think that I seized upon this feeling and identity of being bisexual too quickly. I'm not sure if this crush on H I had was even real, if that makes sense, but it felt real for some time. But I think that I extended it out past its use so that I could feel special in a way. I told a needless amount of people about it too. I told people for the wrong reasons, though. It gave me attention, and as an insecure 8th grader, what greater commodity is there?
Up until this moment, your fighter escort is still on the ground, guarding its limited fuel capacity. Now flight control gives a signal to the Thunderbolts. They climb upstairs to overtake you.
After discussing my time in high school, I became very fearful. I realized that my time in high school was much different than the sort of narrative I had constructed inside of my head. So as I explore this time, you'll soon see the reason why this sort of soul-gripping terror overcame me. I think I was in very real danger of slipping into something so utterly wrong, yet the entire time I was blindfolded to this danger. My life could have taken a very different turn had I been unlucky. I think the best way to describe my high school experience would be one of simmering, poisonous rage. But it was a rage, I think, so corrupting and deadly and so stealthy that, I mean, even now I still find it in my mind when I go to dust out the corners. It lurks within the walls of my mind. I still can sort of see it out of the corner of my eye, scuttling away to avoid the lights when I turn them on. It's like termites or rats. The spring cleaning I've done for the past year has gotten rid of most of it, but I can still feel it at strange times, just this irrational anger. I wish to lay out a chronology of how this anger came to be, though I only have impressions and flashes of vivid moments. It's like trying to recall a fever dream. It was a dream that I almost forgot, but it chilled me when I grasped onto it before it slipped away. So I would say that the rage sort of that I began to feel throughout high school was ignited when I was when I was having a conversation with a former scoutmaster. He mentioned how a conservative commentator, Ben Shapiro, had been vehemently protested by college students at Berkeley. Ben was a Jew, and these idiot college students were calling him a Nazi. It's insanity. This truly was PC culture gone wild. This anger was only a precursor, a foreshadowing, so to speak, of what was to come. The true beginning of this anger came when I first watched a Ben Shapiro video. The title of this video was Ben Shapiro Destroys Transgenderism and Abortion Arguments. When I watched through this video, I was exhilarated as I was exposed to what I thought were new ideas. All it took was for him to cherry-pick the 50% suicide rate before and after meme for me to believe that transitioning was not a valid treatment.
That's nonsense. The transgender suicide rate is 40%. It is 40%. And according to the Anderson School at UCLA, it makes no difference. There's a study that came out last year. It makes no difference virtually no difference, statistically speaking, as to whether people recognize you as a transgender person or not.
I could have simply taken 5 minutes to Google the study he had cited and realized that it in fact came to the exact opposite conclusion of good old Ben. Yet I was too caught up in the fervor of having an idea that contradicted the dominant narrative of the left. I felt like I was some sort of rebel, violating the PC culture of my school.
Look, I've heard about all I can take from a young brat like you. Despite your bad behavior, I came up here and tried to be friends. I even apologized. You didn't even try to respond like a human being. Something's going to be done about you.
I remember now with horror and disgust asking purposefully baiting questions of an LGBT issues student group that had come to my humanities class. I also remember chuckling at what I thought were stupid statements made by them. I thought at the time that the laughing was quiet enough, but thinking back on it now, I'm almost sure they were well aware of my snarky attitude. It was so easy to shift this anger from what I viewed as logical contradictions to the people themselves, and then to the LGBT community at large. A similar thing occurred when I asked a sex educator who came to my humanities class similar baiting questions. I blamed this on PC culture gone wild. Why would they be teaching this kind of sex education to kids? The left truly had gone insane. Never mind the evidence she had just presented in class of how sex education prevents sexual irresponsibility. Never mind the academic consensus. It just felt wrong. I thought I was some intellectual renegade. So much for Ben's facts over feelings. It's ironic that this was one of the things I admired most about listening to him. I thought I truly was putting facts over feelings. But only one feeling reigned. Self-righteous, white-hot rage.
Dave.
It was at this time that I began listening to more of his videos. I began to hate my humanities teacher for what I saw as an enforcement of leftist PC culture. I saw boogeymen everywhere. Then came summer. Over the summer I worked at a library. Here's where the timeline gets fuzzy. I'm not exactly sure when the worst parts of the rage began to seep into my mind, but it was a slow process. I remember discussing Charlottesville protests with one of my managers. It was a protest that I knew almost nothing about. I said at one point that I did not wish to be a part of the radical left. He said I didn't know there was a radical left. I stayed quiet, but this made me boil with rage inside. Of course there was a radical left. They were all around me enforcing PC culture. Tenth grade was the worst. I would say this was quite a precarious time. It may very well have fallen into the yawning chasm that threatened to swallow me up. For an assignment in my history teacher's class, I read about the Anti-Defamation League. This was, I figured, one of the most egregious offenders of enforcing politically correct culture. And they were Jewish. Of course, the Jews were the social justice warriors, the PC Gestapo. Here I fell into what I would say was a Nazi-esque mindset. I think on some level I knew that this was insane, yet on a deeper level I wondered if this was true. Was it really the Jews who were responsible for this insanity? From this point onwards, my mindset resembled that of Norman Bates from Hitchcock's Psycho. Transphobia pervades this movie, but Bates is an accurate metaphor for my own attitude. No one was ever aware that I had begun to suspect the Jews. I wasn't even myself. There were two competing ideologies in my head. I was two people, so to speak, the dark conclusion of the path I had begun to take. Bates's mother persona, so to speak. It was all my rage and hatred. At brief moments it would rise up out of the dark ocean. I could see the shark fin poking out above the surface, its foreboding outline in the ocean. Wasn't my manager who had denied the radical left Jewish? Searing anger flashed briefly before I managed to shove down these thoughts and forget about them. There were two girls in my class who were Jewish, weren't they? And they were the face of what I saw as radical feminism.
Spoiled, selfish, self-centered. This woman believes the sun should rise and set according to her needs. Her uncontrollable temper flares up at the slightest imagined provocation. She's cold, heartless, scheming, always ready to attack the unsuspecting male. Her weapons are her looks, her personality, her youth. Deadly, mortal weapons which never cease to fascinate her. She spends most of her time and thought keeping in fighting trim. Her vanity is beyond belief. This is the only person in the world she really loves. Everyone else is either an admirer or a slave.
Then, one of my best friends was Jewish. His family was Jewish. A hot flash of rage before a moment of shame and then desperately trying to forget what I had felt towards my friend. These little moments punctuated my 10th grade year. Every time I tried, and mostly succeeded to ignore them and forget about them. This is what makes my blood run cold. It was a series of events that I had almost completely forgotten. I only truly began to think about it when I began to discuss it with one of my friends. Thank God I never had a mind to seek out others on the internet who might have shared my views. The entire time I was skipping through daisies while oblivious to the spiritual threat that could have consumed me. At any moment I could have whipped the shower curtains to the side, brandishing a knife, not as Norman Bates, but as mother. However, it soon became easy for me to forget this line of rage. Occasionally it would pop up. It still does now. I can see it out of the corner of my eye during fleeting moments. However, soon I began to move on. I suppose the next group that I rested this anger upon was the LGBTQ community.